Hilchis Tumas Ochlin, Perek Revi. Here the Rambam discussing the shiurim of Oichel to be Mekabel Tuma and Alderah to transmit Truma. Oichel and Mashke. Kam Shir Oichel L'Tuma is L'Tumas Atzmum for it to become tummy on itself is Kol Shein. Afilu Shum Shum Echardel is Mistame Shnemer Mikol Oichel Asher Yachel, so we learn out Kol Shu. So the Rambam is clear that this din, that an Oichel is Mitami Kol Shu, is a Deraisa Dikadin. That's Mikol Eichel Asher Yochel, even Kol Shu. Tesis and Psachim says that on a deraisadik level, in order for Eichel to become Tummy, also needs a share of a Kebetza. The fact that Eichel becomes Tummy, even by a Kol Shu, is only a Din D'Rabbanan. But from the Rambam, it's mashma. The Pashtus Advarim is that it's a Din D'Raisa. It's pretty clear. Then that's been again to become Tummy itself, and then the Ein Eichel Tummy Mitami Eichel Acher, for Eichel to be Mitami something else, either another Eichel, a mashkin, a yadayim. We learned that an Eichel Rishon could be Mitami yadayim, is Achi Yirbe Kebeitza B'lei Klipasa. It has to be the size of a Beitza, but a Beitza without the shell of the Beitza. V'chein, Ha'eichel Eichlum Tmeim, Ein Nifsal Achi Eichel Kebeitza Omechza. Now the word V'chein, Pashtus means that just like over here there's a shir L'tamei, but Benegeh, what we learned till now, Kebeitza B'lei Klipasa was talking about Legabi Negia. In order for Eichel to be Matami, Eichel Acher, or Mashkin, or Yadayim through Negia, it needs a Beitza B'lei Klipasa. V'chein, there's another gather of Eichel being Matami, and that's through eating Eichel, Midrabanan. Someone that eats Eichel and Tmeim becomes Tummy, so there's also a share. So that's the V'chein. V'chein or Eichel and Tmeim, Ein Nifsel, Achi Eichel Kebeitza Omechza. V'zehu Chatzi Pras. A Beitza Omechza, that's a Chatzi Pras, because a kikar is 2 sudas, which is 6 beisim, according to the Rambam. A pras means a half a loaf, a half a kikar, which is a share of a suda echad, and a chatzi pras means a half of that pras, which is 1.5 beisim. Yeah. Question is if this kebeitzo mechza of a eichum tmeim also means beitza b'lei klipasa. So we will learn that that's the taish also in the v'chein. The v'chein means also over here it's kebeitza b'lei klipasa. Maybe that's the pashtus advarim, but l'chora that's not the taish of the v'chein. The v'chein means that over here there's also a share. L'chora that's the pashtus. Halacha beis. So that's oichel. Oichel is to come tummy as a kolshu, and to become a acherim it has to be a kebeitza. Hamashkin is also as mistamin bekolshu and becomes tummy bekolshu, aber umitamin bekolshu. Mashke could be even mitami acherim bekolshu. Afilu tipas mashkin tmeim kechardel, a very small drop of mashkin tmeim, shenoga be'echlim, a bekelim by mashke could be also be mitami kelim midrabanan, a b'mashkim acherim is always nitmu. Aber v'afal pikein, so even though lepel in order to be negeh b'mashke tmeim, and those mashke tmeim is mitami b'negia bekolshu, but that's only b'negia. Afal pikein ein ashoyse mashke tmeim nifsel. At sheyishte revius k'meshe b'yanu. So we see the hamshach advarim. So before b'negia oichlin, there's a shir, side b'negia the din of negia, and side b'negia the din of oichel. B'negia the negia it has to be a kebeitza. L'gabi oichel has to be a kebeitza machza. Masha'enki b'mashkin, b'negia negia there's no shir. It could be matami b'kolshu. Masha'enki b'negia sheisa, over there's a shir of revius. Halacha gimel. Kol ha-mashkin mitztarfen lifsik l'sagvir l'revius. In other words, it makes no difference which mashka, different types of mashka. If a person drinks a revius of mashka tmeim, so maybe he becomes tummy. The chol ha-eichlin is mitztarfen l'kebeitza. The oichel could be mitztarfen l'kebeitza also l'gabi the shir negir. Al derech zeh l'tamei tumas ochlin. The chol ha-eichlin mitztarfen l'kebeitza l'tamei tumas ochlin. And also like a chatzi pras lifsik l'sagvir. So again, so the shiurim on mitztaref. But again, mashkin is nitzaref legabe lifsa l'sagvir because legabe the shir of negia there's no shir, so mele pasuk is nitzaref. Mashenkim b'negia oichel it's nitzaref by both side b'negia negia and side b'negia lechel. Yeah, l'tami tumas afilu chita im kamach im botzek im teinu basur kiyetzabelu. You put together a kernel of wheat together with kamach together with botzek, together with a teina, together with basar, all together ukiyetzu beilu, sakil mitzdarif, and it all becomes a share of a kibetzu or a kibetzu mechza. Halacha dalad ha'oir ha'mechube bebasar The oir, so oir be'etzem is not oichel, but oir when it's mechuber bebasar, it has the din of a tziruf to oichel, as we'll see b'hamshach, and also the hamorak. Hamorak is the gravy that comes out of meat, which also becomes nitztarif to the meat, together with the meat. Is nachamol ha'oir ha'mechuber bebasar, or the hamorak, and the hatavlin. Hatavlin is spices. V'ha'alal. Now halal is skin, which was taken off the animal, and it has pieces of meat attached to it. So v'halal aval pishem miktsasi chishav olav umiktsasi lechishav olav. So if the whole halal you a chishav olav, so it all becomes it becomes a din of oichel. It becomes a din of oichel. If all of it wasn't chishav olav, so nothing is oichel. Masha'enkin, if you have a halal which miktsasi chishav olav umiktsasi lechishav olav or miktsasi poltasi chaya. So Teisun Chulin says that when poltasi chaya, then the derech is to eat. Now there's meat, a piece of skin that was taken off an animal through a chaya, together with flesh, so then it's normal to eat that piece of meat. Masha'ekin, the flesh that was taken off a chaya by a person, by a knife, so then that's not regular to eat it. So Memelis, if you have a skin, which part of it was poltasi chaya, what part of it was poltasi sakin, or part of it was choshev olav, part of it lei choshev olav, and also v'hatzomes hamchubaris bebasar. You have bones, which bones betzim are not oichel, but these bones are attached to the basar, or v'hagidim, or v'hamekayim harakim min hakarnaim min hatlafayim. You have the part of the horns or the hooves, which are the soft part, the part that's next to the flesh, which is soft, which has which blood comes out of when you cut it. And also v'haknafayim v'hanutza. Knafayim is the feathers. There's big feathers and small feathers. So knafayim is the large feathers, and hanutza is the very small feathers. V'hamekemis harakim, and the soft places. Minat tzipornayim, from the nails, u'minachartim, and from the beak. Hamavloim bebasar is kol echad meyelu. All of these is mistamin. Mistamin means they could become tummy. Now, what it means to say they could become tummy, it means that if we're talking about over here all these things, the pashas. That's how the Ramorach teaches also from the Tiferes Yisrael. Pashas, we're talking like this. All these things that he's mentioning over here, be'etzem, they're not mekabel tumah themselves. They're only mekabel tumah when they're betziruf with something that is mekabel tumah. So, for example, when you speak about ha'oir mechuber bebasar, since it's mechuber bebasar, so if you touch the oir, so then everything becomes tamei, and if everything became tamei, so then through touching the oir, it could transmit the tumah. And al dereh the morak which is connected to the meat, and the tavlin, and also the alal which is miktsasi chishav olav, miktsasi lechishav olav. So the chiddush over here is that the part that's lechishav olav is also mitzdarif, and it becomes oichel, and it's mitzdarif tikabetza. And al dereh the other things that are mentioned over here, even though be'etzem they're not oichel, but here they're mitzdarif to other oichel to be mashlim. In other words, to either be considered that by touching them you touch the entire oichel, or by touching them you touch the oichel and mele you became tamei, saile tamei and saile his tamei, and also kolechad me'elu mistamin umitamin umitzdarfin lekebetza oy lekachatzi pras. So in other words, if you eat all of it, so it's mistamei lekachatzi pras. If you touch any of it, so it's also mistamei. And al derech zeh could be mitamei, and this could be mashal the shir of a kibetza. Yeah, that's this din. Halacha hey, kibetza oichlin tmeim shehinichon bechama v'nismatu is einon mitamin. Even though originally it was a kibetza, so the chura be'etzem, the volume of a kibetza is there. It's just that maybe it became shriveled up. But lepel, right now it's not a kibetza, it's einon mitamin, it doesn't transmit tumah. V'chein kezayis min ha-mesem min ha-nevelu kadash min ha-sheretz shehinichon bechama v'nismatus, even though it started off with a kishir, but since right now it's not a kishir, it's tehilin. Now al derech zeh, now this is not a din hilchos tumah, kezayis chaylev v'dam v'neser u'pigel shehinichon bechama v'nismatu is also einon chayav min aleim kares. You're not chayav kares. So these dinim are that even though it started off as a shir, you know for sure there was a shir over here, but lepel, since right now it's shriveled up, so there's no shir. Now hinichon b'kshamim v'nitpachu. Now something which originally started as a kishir, and then because it was bechama, it became smaller, and now you put it out in the rain, and then it blew up again, and v'chazru l'kamesha hayu. So then it returns to its original state. After it was nitbuchu, it expanded, so then it goes back to its original state, bein l'tumah chamura, sai legabe tumah chamura, bein l'tumah kal, bein l'yisur, tumah chamura was a mess. If you have a mess that was originally a kezayis, and then it was becham and it became less than a kezayis, and then it was chazur b'ksham and it became a kezayis, so now it's matami like a mess. And al der is a tumah kal, mashal eichel, which is matami, is matami, it has to be a kibetza, but it's only a tumah kala. So in Mela, if it shriveled up, became less than a kibetza, so it's not matami. Then when it goes back l'kshamim, and now it's again kibetza, it is matami. And bein li'isur, al der is a benegei spoke about chaylev, neser, that if they became less, so then it's not a kashir. You don't get malchus, for example. And if it goes back and being the shir, so there's a chiv malchus and kos. Halacha zayin, alei ptzolim uvnei ptzolim. In other words, you have the leaves of onions, of young onions, and also the onions that grow from onions, shein chalulim, which are hollow, is im yesh bem rear, if there's liquid inside that hollow onion, so then is the leaves of onion that come out, and there's a hole inside those leaves, and the question is there anything inside those leaves? Im yesh bem rear, if there's a liquid inside, so then mishtar and k'mishayim, so then you mishayir the whole onion as it is. If they were empty, so then is chalolim, so you can't be mitzar of that empty space inside those leaves as being kilo kibetza. You want to know if there's a kibetza of, let's say this onion became tummy, this leaf of an onion became tummy. Now if the leaf, if you're going to count the hollow part inside, so it's going to be a kshir of a kibetza. If you're not going to count the hollow part inside, it's not going to be a kshir of a kibetza. The question is, so on that we say it depends. If in the hollow part inside there is liquid, there's rear, so then it's considered part of the oichel, and the mele, that hollow part is mitzvah of the kibetza. Masha'inkin, if there's no rear, so then you have to flatten it out. You don't count that hollow area, and then you're mishayir whether there's a kashir of a kibetza of the leaves which were around the hollow part. If they were just hollow and empty, so then the ma'ich is chalol, you have to smack, you push it down, and then you mamayir what's there of the leaves. Now pas suvginin, which is like a sponge type of bread, or there's a bread that has air inside, is mishtayres k'meshehis. Even though it's not like a matzah, it's not a solid piece of bread. There's air inside, but nevertheless that air is normal. So therefore you don't have to squeeze it and take out the air. However, if there's a large hole, in other words, it's not like there's airy in it. There's a large area where there's a hole in there, so then the ma'ich is chalola. In other words, then that hole is not part of the shear. So then you have to fetch in the chalola, the empty space, and then you're mishayir of what's there. Now, psar ha'egel shenitpach, if let's say you cooked a calf, the flesh of the meat of a calf, and that became bigger, or a psar skenish nismayach, the seder is that when you cook, so certain things when you cook expand, certain things when you cook become smaller, shrivel up. So the pale, that's the way it is right now, is mishtar and kameshain. Knows when it went out into the rain and it became blown up, so that's not really considered part of the shear, unless that was the original shear, and just it shriveled up because of the sun, and now it re-expanded because of the rain, then it would work. Masha'inkin over here, since it was cooked, and it's normal that when something is cooked, sometimes it expands, and sometimes it shrivels up, so that becomes its real shear. So the psar egel shenitpach is, or al derez psar skena shenismai, the shear, the way it is now, that's its real shear. Halacha yud, ha'eges, a nut, a walnut, v'hatmarim and dates, v'hashokid and almonds, ha'miskarkishin, which are making noise inside, which means that obviously inside some of it dried up, and therefore you're making noise. And when it's full, it's not making any noise because it fills up the entire shell. Masha'inkim, when they start shriveling up, so they start making noise. Now the question is, do you count the shear of the shell of the outer layer outside, or do you take in the mind that since it's obviously making noise, so it means there's space inside, so maybe we can't count that space. So that's the chiddush. Ha'eges, v'hatmorim, v'hashokit, ha'miskarkishin, is mishtarin k'meishayin. They're mishtar the way they are. Halacha yudalef. Kol shetumase v'shiuri shavim, if side the Tumah and side the Madrega of Tumah and side the Shir are the same, is Mitzarfen Zem, then they can be Mitzaref one with the other. As we'll learn Behemshach. How you Tumasum Shavim, Avalei Shiurim, there's the same Madrega of Tumah, but they don't have the same Shir. A Shiurim where they have the same Shir, Avalei Tumasum, but they don't have the same Madrega of Tumah, is a Mitzarfen. Vafilu L'tamei L'kikal Shebeneim. Even that it should become Tomei like the lesser of the two is also not. Like the Rambam will say, Ketzat. Ketzat to Masiv Shiuri, what would be a case that they have the same Madrega of Tumah, but they don't have the Madrega of Shir? Kigain Psar Hamesver Uvirokov Shalei. So there's then Psar Hames, the flesh of a mess, is Matami Bikazais. Rokov is that the Psar Hames that disintegrated and became floury, that's the Rokov, it became floury. So then over there's the Shir of Malei Chofnai, and those two handfuls of that powdery substance that became from the Psar Hames, that's Matami. It has a din of Tumas Mes, and it's Matami. It's not Matami b'maga, because Lapel you can't touch the whole thing at one time, but it's Matami b'oyelu b'mes. So it's Be'em is the same Madrega of Tumah. They're both Matami like a mess. However, there's a difference. A mess is, the Psar Hames is Matami b'kazayas, and Rokov is Matami b'mlei chofnayim. So therefore they can't be Mitzaref. They can't be Mitzaref. L'chur, let's say that L'chur, for Rokov you need more. You need mlei chofnayim. So let's use a little bit of the mess to be mashlim the shir of Malei Chofnayim for a Rokov. You have a Malei Chofnayim missing a little bit. And now you have a mess which is not a kazayis. So take a little bit, a chotzi zayis of the mess, to be mashlim the shir of Malei Chofnayim. So we say no, it doesn't work that way. Because lepel, either you have to have a complete Malei Chofnayim of Rokov or complete kazayis of a mess. You can't combine the two. And that's this din of Tumasi v'lei Shiuri. And Aldar Shiuri v'lei Tumasi, they both have the same shir, but it's not the same Tumah. Kigayim Psar Hames and Psar Nevela. There's Psar Hames is Matame b'Kazayis, and Psar Nevela is Matame b'Kazayis. Now Psar Hames is Matame is a different level of Tumah. It's Aviyavis HaTumah, and it's Matame b'Oil. Masha'inkim Psar Nevela is not like that. So the din, and also you're not going to say L'moshel, if you have a Psar HaNevela, chaser a little bit of a Kazayis, so be mitzar of the mess and say like this: I have over here a mess. A mess is the yesh b'chlal masayim monich. I mean, a mess is like an avela plus. So the male is kilo. There's a gazayis and avela. We don't say that. So that's the din. That's the din. They're not mitzaref. Not mitzaref. They're different because it's a different mohus. In other words, you can't be mitzaref an avela and mess, and you can't be mitzaref the rokov and the bosser. That's what he's saying. That's this din. That's shiurei. That's Tumasi v'lei shiurei, and shiurei v'lei Tumasi kigem Psar Hames u'Psar Nevel. Ve'en tzorich leimar shem leo yishav v'lei b'shir v'lei b'tumah kigem Psar Nevel u'Psar Sheretz. So Psar Nevel is matam b'mago b'masa. Sheretz is not matam b'masa. Another difference is Psar Nevel is only matam b'kazayis. And Psar Sheretz is matam b'kadasha. So certainly a mitzvah. Halacha Yud Beis. Now Ochlin Tmeim is always shiurim shava. Shekol Eichel Tamei Einem Tamei Ele Kabetza. So the shear of Eichel Tamei Litamei Acherim is a kabetza, and also the Tumasum shava. What's that Shemashim shava? Shekol Eichel Tamei Einem Tamei Ele B'maga. Ve'einem Tamei Lei Adam V'Lei Kelim. So Eichel Tamei really. So even though Lamashal, one will be a Rishon, one will be a Sheni, but that's not called Ein Tumasum Shava. No, the Tumasum Shava means that they're, how are they Matame? How do they transmit the Tumah? That's the Taish Tumasum Shava. And Shiurim Shava, so Eichlin are always Shiurim Shava, it's always a Kabetza, and it's Tumasum Shava because the Tumah is only through Maga. Shekol Eichel Ein Matame Ele B'Maga, Ein Matame Li'odem V'Lekelim, Lefichach. Mitzdarfen Letami Kikal Shebenei. So if you have two pieces of Eichel, and one may be a Rishon and one may be a Sheni, so Lepel, they'll always be Mitzdaref Lekal Shebenei. Cases, near the Rambam will give the cases of Tzirufim of Eichel. Kechatzi Beitza Eichel Rishon, Ukechatzi Beitza Eichel Sheni, Shebol Lon Zebezeh. You have a half a Beitza of Eichel Rishon and a half a Beitza of Eichel Sheni, and you mixed it. So the din is Hariz Sheni. So in other words, Be'amis, it's a half a Rishon, but a Rishon is not less than a Sheni. So in Mele, it's Kilo like you have a Sheni. And therefore, V'im Noga B'Truma, and this Beitza, which is comprised of a half a beitza of Eichel Rishon, a half a beitza of Eichel Sheni, which has the din of a Sheni, is a Nogel B'Truma Pasla, because Sheni is Pesel Truma. Now, Kechatzi beitza Eichel Sheni, Uchatzi beitza Eichel Shlishi, Shebol Alon. So again, it's a Reza Shlishi. You don't have a full beitza of a Shlishi, but you don't have a full beitza of a Sheni, so mainly you have a Shlishi. You have Kikal Shebineim. V'chein Kol Kietz B'Zeh, that could be Pesel Kotchim. Afilu Chatzi beitza Eichel Rishon. And you have a Chatzi beitza Eichel Revi Shel Kedesh. So you're being Matzaref from a Rishon to a Revi, Shebol and Zebazeh, is a Riyakel Revi, so they all, both have a din of, together they have a din of a Revi. And what's the ufta of a Revi? A Revi could be Pesel, something for Mechatos. Halacha Yud Gimel. Kebeitza Eichel Rishon, ukebeitza, so till now we spoke about a Chatzi beitza. That you mix the Chatzi beitza with another Chatzi beitza, so you always go Kikal Shebinei. Now if you have a Kebeitza Eichel Rishon, ukebeitza Eichel Sheni, Shebol and Zebazeh, so now you know you have over here a beitza of an Eichel Rishon, so Memela is Hakel Rishon. So right now this mixture, which is comprised of two beitzim, but Lepeil, there's a beitza Rishon inside, so Memela Hakel Rishon. Now Chilkon, you went ahead and you divided these two beitzim, and now you have, each one is two beitzim separately, and you don't, and they're obviously divided, so you don't have a full Rishon in any of them. Chilkon, so Memela is Kolechad Namshenis. It's kilo like the case we had before, which is Chatzi of a Rishon and Chatzi of a Sheni. Shebola, now they have a din of a Sheni. Now Nafel Zela Atzmei, V'Zela Atzmei Al Kika Shel Truma. Each one separately fell on a Kika Shel Truma, so since they have a din, each one has a din of a Sheni. So each Nafel Zela Atzmei or V'Zela Atzmei Al Kika Shel Truma is Paslu. If each one of them on their own fell on a Kika Shel Truma, not together, each one on their own fell on a Kika Shel Truma, so what they did to the Truma was Paslu, because when a Sheni touches Truma, he makes him to a Shlishi. However, Nafel Shneim Kiachod, so now we know together there's a Beitza of Eichel Tamei, which is a Sheni. You know, there was a Sheni and a Shlishi, a Beitza of a Sheni, I'm sorry, there was a Sheni and a Rishon. There was a Beitza of Eichel Rishon, a Beitza of Eichel Sheni. So when Sheni touches Truma, he makes him puzzle. When a Rishon touches Truma, it makes him Tamei, makes him into a Sheni. So when the two of them together go ahead and touch Truma, either when they were the original mixture, or even now they were separated, but now together both of them went ahead and touched the Truma together, so we know that an Eichel Rishon of a Beitza touched this Truma, so Mele becomes Tamei as a Sheni. Masha'in Kain, if they touched it separately, in other words, not together, not as one, so then it's considered a Sheni. Let's read this again. Halacha Yud Gimel. Kebeitz Eichel Rishon, Kebeitz Eichel Sheni. Shebalon Zebazeh. So we know for sure there's a Rishon here. So Akel Rishon. Now Chilkon, so there's no full beitz of a Rishon in each part. Is Kol Echad Mem, each part is a Sheni, because there's no full beitz of a Rishon. Now Nafel Zel Atzmi, V'Zel Atzmi Al Kikar Shel Truma. Now after you divided them, originally it was a beitz of a Rishon, beitz of a Sheni, and you divided them, and now each one had a din of a Sheni, and each one separately fell on a Kikar Shel Truma. It's Paslu. However, Naflu Shneim Kiyachad, if they fell together, so then Asu Sheni. Even though the batzim separate, but since they fell together, so we know that there's a beitza of a Rishon which is touching this Truma. Now the same thing, Halacha Yudal, Kebeitza Eichel Sheni, Ukebeitza Eichel Shlishi Shebol and Zebazah, is a Riyakel Sheni. Again, because we know for sure that there is a beitza of a Sheni. Now Chilkon, if you divided this Eichel Rishon Eichel Shlishi, it's Kol Echad Mem Shlishi, because you don't really have a kebeitza of an Eichel Sheni in each part. Now Nafel Zel Atzmi V'Zel Atzmi Al Kikar Shel Truma, Le Paslu, because a Shlishi can't passel a Truma, and since each one separately doesn't have a Sheni, there's no kebeitza of a Sheni in either of them, so therefore it has a din of a Shlishi, and a Shlishi can't passel Truma. However, Nafel Shneim Kiachod, you had the two parts, and now they both fell together on this Truma. So since together we know that together there is a kebeitza of a Sheni over here, is Paslu, because they make it into a Shlishi. Halacha Tezayin, Tezvav, kebeitza Eichel Rishon, ukebeitza Eichel Shlishi Shebol and Zeh. You mixed an Eichel Rishon with a Shlishi. Now over here the Chiddush is because a Rishon makes the Shlishi into a Sheni. So at the very least, it's going to be a sheni. So if they're both there together, so there's a rishon. Because since there's a rishon here, so even though it's together with a shlishi, but since there's a rishon over here, so that's the din of a rishon. But if you're going to separate it, so you're not going to have the kibetza of the rishon, but on the other hand, the shlishi became a sheni. So mainly you're left with a sheni. That's the chiddush of this din. Kibetza echol rishon, or kibetza echol shlishi, shebol and zebazeh, is rishon. And in the original state, when bolams, you know, you have a beitza of an echol rishon, so you have a rishon. However, chilkon, when you divided them, is there sheni, is there sheni? Why? Shashlishi, shenogim rishon, not so sheni. Halacha tezay. Kishtei beitzim oichol rishon. Over here you have a case, you have two beitzim of an eichol rishon. Ukidei shtei beitzim of eichol sheni shebolo. So now in its original state, it's pasha dakel rishon. Because you have a beitz of an eichol rishon, you have two beitzim of an eichol rishon. Now here the chilkon l'shnayim, now you divide it into two parts. So we nemon that kol echad mem rishon. Even though l'chur it's lav dafka bemes, it's lav dafka that there's a full rishon in each part. Because again, there was two beitzim in each. There was two beitzim of a rishon and two beitzim of a sheni. And now it was bolam, so you have four beitzim. So now you divided those four beitzim, and each one is two beitzim. So l'chura, each one is two beitzim. We don't really know that there's a beitza of the oichol rishon in these two beitzim which are here now. You could have that there's 1.5 beitzim of the oichol sheni. You can have that there's 1.5 beitzim of the eichel sheni in these two beitzim that you now divided, and there's only a half a beitzah of an eichel rishon here. That's l'chura possible, but nevertheless we say that since it was considered mixed, it brings over here that it was a mixture of flour. It was a mixture like it was considered a din of lach balach. So since it was a din of lach balach, we consider it as if this mixture mixed into the entire mixture. And it was this part of the dinam over here that we consider the mixture was mixed into the entire mixture. So Memela, since there was two beitzim, and now you have there was two beitzim of Eichel Rishon, there were two beitzim of Eichel Sheni, and now you have two beitzim. So we nemon that in your two beitzim there must be one beitz of Eichel Rishon. That's the word. And in these two beitzim there must be an Eichel Rishon, Eichel Sheni. Nachama. Halacha tezayt. Kishtei beitzim eichel rishon, or kishtei beitzim eichel sheni shebalach. And hakel rishon at this point in time they're all a rishon. Now chilkon l'shnayim, you took these four beitzim and you divided into two parts, 2 and 2. Is kol echad mem rishon? Each one is a rishon. Why? Because we nemon that in each part there is at least one beitz of an eichel rishon. Now chilkon l'shleishach halakim ila harba. So then it's kol echad mem sheni. Then each one is only a sheni. So at this point in time, hakel sheni, because you know for sure there's a beitz of an eichel sheni. Now chilkon l'shnayim, so it's still kol echad mem sheni, because again we nemon that in each part there is a one beitza of an eichel sheni. However, l'shleisha l'arba, so then already there's no hechrich that there's that amount. So then hari kol echad mem shlishi, each one has a din of a shlishi.